Would you like a system to implement in your salon that could virtually solve all the problems you're having with your team and maybe your culture? Hi, I'm Kayla Swanson, and I am your host of the Profitable Salon Owner podcast. And this episode is brought to you by Salon Scale, the ultimate salon back bar management app built by salon owners for salon owners. Salon Scale is designed to turn your salon back bar into a profit center, manage back bar formulas, product costs, and inventory. Click the link to get 10% off your annual subscription. And today I have brought back Jason Everett. What's up, Jason?
Whoa, I know that guy. What's going on? I'm excited to be on and be talking about this subject, man. This is a good one today.
I know. We are talking today about a code of honor.
Yeah.
If you have heard of it or if you know about it, Blair Singer wrote a book called Code of Honor, and we are diving into how we teach Code of Honor in our academy and how we implement Code of Honor, honestly, in our own team, and just the game changer that it can be for your salon. So Jason, let's dive into a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Code of Honor.
Can I just say, if you haven't heard of a Code of Honor, you've probably heard of the 10 Commandments. You might have heard of those. And I'm not saying this is religious. I'm just saying, like, in any organization, it requires that you have a set of rules, because in the absence of rules, people make up their own. And if you have people that are not following your rules, it might be you, it might be the rules, it might be how you set it up, it might be all those things. And so on today's podcast, I hope that every single one of you walk away with some great insights into how do you actually get people to do what you would like them to, not just whatever the heck they want.
Yeah, because if you're listening and you have anybody in your salon, there's problems being caused, people fighting, or anything where your culture feels like there's like holes in it, or there's like you guys don't feel like you're coming together. Yeah, resistance, like all those like negative things that kind of come up in your culture, like problems like how do I handle, maybe you have a problem in your salon right now and you're like, man, how do I handle this? Well, we bring you the Code of Honor, which is a great tool and resource to be able to just like, we'll get into it. It's hard.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be so good. So stick around. It's going to be awesome.
It'll solve all your problems.
So Jason, Blair Singer wrote this book, and let's talk into it because he wrote the Code of Honor for, and you know what, we'll pull up on the screen. So if you're watching, you'll see it pop up on the screen. So Code of Honor. So Blair wrote this book for just any business. He's saying like Code of Honor is good for any business. Let's talk about the Code of Honor in general.
Well, yeah, I mean, he wrote it because he had there was a big difference between like a tight team that like when the going got really rough, they bonded closer versus when the going got rough, they scattered. And they studied great organizations and said, why is it that when, some organizations, the pressure gets cranked up, they fall apart. And when some other organizations, the pressure turns up, like they come together. I would say on our team, it's similar, right? Like our team is really good in the clutch. Like it's amazing in the clutch. And when when our backs are up against the wall, people just show up and amazing things happen. And like people get tighter and more enmeshed. And think about this for a second as in a military sort of situation. I know it sounds crazy, but you could spend a couple years of your life in the military. And I used to do recruiting for the U.S. Army. And when I was a civilian recruiter for the U.S. Army and we would do tour teams and all this stuff, you'd meet people that like, they'd have a 2 or 3 year experience with somebody. They went through some hard stuff. Would you agree? A couple of years in the military, if you're deployed somewhere, obviously if you're not sitting at a beach in Miami, but like if you've been deployed and you went through some really hard stuff with those people, those are friends for life. Yeah. Well, how are those friends for life? Because they have rules. They had a mission. They had a vision. They had a purpose. And regardless of what you think about wars or any of those other things, putting people in difficult situations with a strong set of rules will bond them together for life. Yeah. And so this Code of Honor, the idea of it was, how do you take something like that and install it into an organization, whether it's 3 people or 300 or 3,000 people, that says, this is what we live by. This is who we are. If you want to play this game with us, here's how we play. And that's what a Code of Honor is.
When you bring people together, like you said before, if you don't have rules, people make up their own. And when you're trying to, in your salon, you're trying to accomplish a lot. You're trying to have services done, bring in profit, build your business. There's a lot of moving parts. And when it comes down to it, if you don't have a list of guidelines or a list of like, how do we operate when the going gets tough? Yeah. And I love what the Code of Honor we'll get into is like, it's also a way to even call out other people, or not call out, call to the Code of Honor.
Look at you. Good catch. Good catch.
We just reviewed our Code of Honor.
Yeah.
And so calling people to it and being able to hold, like we know, like I'm held accountable to the Code of Honor, you're held accountable to the Code of Honor, and we're following the same rules and we're all very clear on what they are, which I think is really, really powerful.
Yeah. And I would say it's a set of rules created by the team for the team, not a set of rules by the owner for the team. And one of the biggest mistakes I ever saw, because by the way, if you don't know this, Kayla, I don't know if I ever shared this with you. I read Blair's book, Code of Honor. I got trained on doing the Code of Honor. Then I came back to our company. I had about 10 people at it at the time. Not this business, another business when I was doing the marketing, promotions, and recruiting with the U.S. Army and all that stuff. And we came back, and my boss and I set up all the rules. And we set up like 10 pages of rules. And then we handed them the team. And before anybody started, they had to study this 10-page of rules for like a 3-hour meeting. And the whole thing was, the rules were for the team. And I remember that the boss, we left the meeting. He's like, well, I'm so glad they're going to have those rules to follow. I'm like, well, dude, those are for us too. And he's like, they're not for me, man. I'm the owner. And I was like, uh-oh. Because the set of rules is for the team and for the owner to all be playing the same game. And it should be short. It should be 10 to 12 items on your code of honor. It should be positively written for you and for the staff. And the team can call you to the code. You can call them to the code. And that's what makes a really great code.
Like a code of honor for the whole company.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a representation of the company itself. You know what I mean? It's like in the absence of the owner, the company still looks the same.
Yes, I love that. So in Code of Honor, now that would give you a little precursor to what we're getting into.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Code of Honor and like how do you like start to implement this with your team? Because there's a system to follow. Like it's not just
there is. Yeah, there's a system to follow, and the first step in the system is getting clear about your core values as a company. Like a good way to do it is say, hey, what are your top 5 values? And you write down your top 5 values. Your other team, people on your team write down their top 5 values, and you discuss it. And you discuss, okay, well, what are the values that you hold to be dear? And you might say honesty, truth, integrity, relationships, love, like whatever the things are for you. And what you'll find is like, for example, I go back to military example, because like the Marine Corps have a different set of a code. They have a different core code in the Marine Corps. If you don't like shaving your head and shooting automatic weapons, probably shouldn't join the Marines, right? But like Air Force, different code of honor. Right? Navy, different code of honor. Now, don't get me wrong. They're still have a very tight set of rules for the Air Force, but like they even make a joke about it, like Air Force people versus Marine Corps versus Navy versus Army versus all that stuff. And I don't mean to get into any of those politics, right? But like just looking at those differences, they know the rules are different. Like I had a Marine who worked for me, and to him, like he was a good night's sleep as long as he wasn't laying on the ground in a hole that he dug for himself. He said, because that's when his experience of being in Iraq was he dug a hole in the ground and slept in that hole. That was Marine Corps. I have another buddy who was an Air Force pilot in Iraq, and they used to the Marines would call it Club Med, because the Air Force had air-conditioned tents, cots, pillows, sleeping bags, and the Marines are sleeping in their clothes in dirt holes that they dug for themselves. Different code. But the Marine Corps is like, we love it. We know we're the grit. We're first ones in, last ones out. We love it. Like that's just them. And Air Force is like, well, we fly planes. Like we're cooler. Like we have to be ready for our perfect things. We're top notch. We're precision. Just different ethos. And so the reason why I'm saying that is like, I'm not saying you have to decide if you want to sleep in the dirt or if you want an air-conditioned tent.
Ready to transform your business and improve your salon's profitability? With Lonza's 3-in-1 technology and intermixable shades, your hair color inventory is streamlined with limitless creativity behind the chair. Click the link below to unveil the secret to salon success.
We're Forest, born on the salon floor and built for and by hair and beauty professionals like you. Forest is your marketing, your reporting, your reputation management. You need one easy-to-use system that does it all. Forest, together we grow.
But if you got to decide, if you're a salon owner, are you a salon that specializes in children under 5 years old, their hair, or do you deal with blue hair old ladies, or do you deal with a fashion conscious 30 and 40-year-old? Like each of those salons might have a slightly different code of honor. A salon that has children probably doesn't enforce a cancellation policy to charge the client if the kid cancels.
Yeah.
Right? Because I saw that come up in the Profitable Saloner group the other day, right? So I'm like, I'm trying to figure out this cancellation policy. I'm like, well, who are your guests? Like, who are they? Because is that in your code of honor? What happens? How does it work? What are the rules? Because again, in the absence of rules, people make up their own. And you got to know who the rules are for. And did you create them for the right person or not?
Love that. Because I think it's like what you're saying is like your salon, like building a code of honor. I want you to know that building your code of honor is very unique to your salon. You can't copy and paste anybody else's code of honor because you want to build it in a way that it fits into your culture, what your values are, what you're trying to create within your salon, and what kind of culture you want with your team. And your team all kind of comes up with it together. Like the code of honor is something you build with your team. It's not you build, like you said earlier. You build, you hand over. It's like we're cultivating together. What does us unified as a one team? What are our core values and what do we want in our code of honor?
Yeah. And by the way, once it's created, you don't change it. Like there's not been like, people are like the Constitution is a good example because it's a set of rules that was set up, but then there's a lot of amendments to the Constitution, right? So like, it's a little bit fuzzy because you're like, well, here's the Constitution, but there's a lot of amendments to it. So that's kind of an example of a set of rules that got a little sideways. You have to be very mindful of what the amendments are because the 10 commandments haven't been amended recently, right? Like they're not like, well, there's a new 2.0 version. So what I would just say is that you asked about what the process was. First of all, you asked the team for the values. Then you discuss what it's like to be on a championship team. Has anybody played on a championship team? What was it like? What was different? What were the rules? How do people treat each other? And like for me, and by the way, I'll give you the rest of these just so you know. You talk about it. You talk about what's on a championship team. Then you start creating rules based on the problems that you've experienced and the tolerances that you want to have. Like, for example, let's say nobody on your team is ever late. You're like, hey, I know people out there on planet Earth are late. So we're going to put a rule in there that says, hey, one of our core penance principles is be on time by being early. I've only met one team in my entire career of setting up code of honor that said, I don't want to have that rule in place. And I was like, what did you just say? And they're like, they don't want to have the, like, everybody be on time by being early. And you know what they said to me, Kayla? They said, if that's the type of problem that you have to solve, you don't deserve to work here. Because nobody would ever be late to anything we've ever done. And they were right. Nobody was ever late. They would have fired you on the spot if you were late for anything. And so they were like, we don't need to have that in there because if that's a rule that they need to follow, fired. Whoa. I was like, whoa. But I want you to hear, like, you set up these rules. So, okay, so here's a process. I know I'm a little ADD on you today. Set up the rule. You start talking about them. Then you turn your values into rules and you compare them and you start to refine them down. I would also recommend that you look at a bunch of other code of honors. We can supply those to you. If you comment code of honor, we can give you an example of a code of honor. And sorry, Kayla, for making you guys do more work. But like comment code of honor, we'll send you an example of a code of honor or get Blair's book. It has examples of the code of honor in there. And then what you do is you look at some examples, say, do we need these rules? Do we not need these rules? What would be helpful for this, etc. And then what you do is agree on 10 to 12 rules, make sure they're written positively and uplifting. And you literally get everybody to look at the code, sign their name to the code of honor and say, I agree to these rules. I am part of the team. And we do that during hiring. We're like, you have to agree to this before you're even hired, right? It's like, do you agree to this? If not, you're not going to last very long, right? Like this is it. And then you have to learn how to enforce the code of honor, which is a whole other conversation. But those are the basic principles to get you moving and get you operational.
I love that. And I love how thanks for breaking down that process for it. And I think in doing the process, and don't cut corners when you're doing this process, like being able to get complete in it. Cause like this isn't just that's a good idea. Let's write down some rules. Like this is something that it can be monumental for your business. It could change your entire culture. We've had so many salons come into our academy and their culture completely changed when they implemented the code of honor. So being intentional with it, knowing what you're doing with it is very important. You said culture and code of honor in the same sentence. I want to talk about that for a second because that's a really, really big deal. I ask people, how's your culture? And they usually go, it's great. We all love each other. And I'm like, you are not family members. Loving each other and letting each other get away with anything you want is not culture. Culture is when met with opposition, everybody rises to the occasion. Meaning, if you as the owner are like, hey, we need to do this thing and it's gonna be really hard, everybody goes, hell yeah. Most salons have a culture that's like, we all smile to each other's faces. There's not really any arguments. There's no gossip. Everybody really likes each other. But if you ask somebody to do something hard, they're like, oh, that's not in my job description. And so they're like, because I'm like, how's your culture? Like, it's amazing. I'm like, okay, well, how are your team meetings? They're good, but nobody will make time to come to them. Oh, how's that a good culture then? How's your culture? Good. How's everybody's results? Oh, our results aren't very good. Well, what do you mean your results aren't very good? Not everybody's selling what they need to be selling. Not everybody's making the income they deserve. There's not blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, look, that's a coaching game that's part of your culture because
you're setting an example that it's okay to suck at what you do and still keep your job.
Yeah.
That's no good.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I love that, because when you're talking about the culture, because your culture, a lot of people, and I see this a lot now being in the industry more, and like, where people think like, oh yeah, we just like each other and we get along pretty well, but if anything goes wrong, then things go out the window.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it can't be perfect all the time. So what do you have in place to support those times when things go wrong and the fire is lit underneath your tushes and you got to like figure out what to do? You guys come together, do not, which is what I love about the code of honor.
So when emotion is high, intelligence is low, right? When you're an emotional wreck, you need to be able to fall back on not a set of not your own emotions, because those are junk in the moment, right? You're not thinking clearly. You've got to fall back to the rules when it gets real, right? And so if you fall back to the rules, you're like, I'm stressed out. I'm like, all right, it says never abandon a teammate in need. Well, I'm stressed out. I need to take care of myself. No. It says mission first, team second, individual third. You're being individual first right now. Like, damn it. Because what will happen is you don't let yourself off the hook. It says, well, look, I think this is garbage. I don't want to be here. Hey, it says take 100% responsibility. No blame, justification, or denial. You're like, like it's literally the bumpers that hold the organization together. So you can trust the person on your right and on your left. Because without it, there's no trust.
Yep. Because like you have, when things are happening, people start reacting, you'd be like, like this is how we show up as a team, because this is your job. At the end of the day, it is your job. This isn't like your family reunion. This is your job, and this is you want to show up and you want to work at a high level. And I can guarantee you from my own experience, we have so many people who come to work with us and they're like, this is the best job I've ever had because of our code of honor, because we hold ourselves to high standards, because we operate differently, because we are all operating in unity to the same code, which has changed my life as an employee and the people that come to work here, just because the code of honor is so powerful. And we know, like, I know what your standards are and I know what my standards are, because we're on the same standards.
Right.
Operating
It's clear. And you know what's crazy? We have people who join the team like, wow, this is a crazy company to work with, and they get let go or we part ways because they couldn't live up to the code. And it's hard. It's hard to be able to say that. Like, but like, that's real. It's like they didn't live up to the code of honor, so they had to go. And they're like, this is the best job ever. Like, sorry, I don't tell you. Like, and I don't mean, look, it doesn't mean we're not perfect. We are perfect. What am I trying to say? We are not. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean we are perfect. It means we are not perfect. Sorry, there was a lot of double negatives happening there. Speaking of not perfect, but the idea is that there's so many opportunities for you to be a better version of yourself when there's a code in place, and it's designed to ask more of you than you ask of yourself. Like the code should be something that everybody strives to get to for excellence.
Yeah. You don't want to implement a code that's all about like, okay, where are we at? And let's make a code for where we're at now. Because you want levels in there. Like we ask people when people get hired, what do you think is your strongest one of these codes? I think we have 12 in our code of honor. Mm-hmm. What do you think is your strongest? What do you think you're going to need to work on? Because that's the point. It's like, we all have strengths and weaknesses, but it's okay. Like there's room in there to like, just because we have a code of honor, if somebody breaks the code of honor, then you just call them to the code and be like,
they're not fired the next day or anything.
Yeah. So it's not like, hey, these are non-negotiables. I mean, they are to a degree, but these are like the framework of how we operate, knowing things are going to go wrong.
Yeah. I asked Blair one time, because I said, man, we have this code of honor. Like, how many times can somebody break the code of honor before they should be fired? Like, is this a 3-strike rule? Like, I don't know. This baseball analogy is a 3-strike. Like, you were late.
Are you ready to increase your retention and revenue and convert website traffic to clients? Then you're ready for Maya. Maya creates better business relationships by pairing the right clients with the right beauty professionals. Use promo code HPSA for your first 2 months free. Visit joinmaya.com to get started.
Sustain Beauty Co. has 2 of the best tools to help you save water, time, and a bunch of money. Join the clean water salon movement with EcoHead's water-saving shampoo nozzles and scrummy plant-based microfiber towels. Available at sustainbeauty.co.
Are you tired of not knowing what your hair color is costing you? With Salon Scale, we take the guesswork out for you, so you can cover your back bar expenses, reduce your color waste, and generate more profit in your salon. Click the link in the description to get 10% off your first year.
Once, you were late twice. I'm just waiting to fire you now, and he was like, no, it's what you're looking for is a pattern and progression over time. And you know what's crazy, Kayla? It's been a long time since I've really seen this in our organization. It's been at least 5 years since I've seen this. So
I thought you were going to say like 3 months.
No, it's been about 5 years since I've seen this. Is that what starts to happen is that when people start that never have broken the code of honor start breaking the code of honor left and right, it's because they've already quit their job, but they're staying. And it's their passive resistance way of saying, I don't want to be here, so I'm not going to follow these rules anymore. And they're like, I don't have anything better to do, or I'm afraid of going to do something else, or whatever their issue is. And that's interesting, right? The other thing about code of honor that's crazy good for you to know, I set up a code of honor for a nurse staffing company out of nurse staffing company out of Salt Lake City one time. And there were like 5 people on the executive management team for this nurse staffing company. And we tried to set up the code of honor so many times to have this meeting. And there was one principal in the organization who, no matter every time we set, she's like, I can't make it, can't make it, can't make it, can't make it, can't make it. And we're like, okay, well, look, we've moved this like 4 times. We're building the code of honor. If you're not there, you are subject to all the rules of the code. Like, just telling you, like, this is your last time. We gave her the date. She no-showed it, didn't come. And we built the code of honor. And every meeting she would say, well, I wasn't there. I didn't agree to any of those things.
Oh my goodness.
And we're like, look, you said if you don't come, you're not going to blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so she says, I didn't agree to these rules. And she ends up getting fired about a month later. She gets fired. And come to find out, she had been mislabeling some of their medical billing to the tune of $2.8 million over the course of the last couple of years. And the reason why I say that is that the people that are resistant to setting up the code of honor are the ones that can't live up to the code of honor. And they probably are already doing things that are detrimental to your organization, even if they're in positions of power. And that owner told me, he's like, Jason, I don't know if you cost me $2.8 million or you made me $2.8 million. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, she was a really good employee. I'm like, she was not a good employee, bro. It was $2.8 million. I said, what the good news is for the next 5 years, you're not going to lose $2.8 million. That's the good news. The bad news is I revealed a problem that your company was leaking $2.8 million that you had never seen. And he was like, okay, I'm glad we did it. And I was like, you still don't seem very glad, right?
Yeah,
you still don't seem very glad. But it was a big revelation because I'm like, well, we plugged a hole. So, we did the math. We're like, this is how much it is. I don't remember how much it was a month at the time, but it was a lot of freaking money.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, you paid for your whole coaching program a month. Meaning like your 1 month paid for my entire coaching system I was given for the year because we were able to put that code of honor in place, suss out somebody who was not a good player on the team and get the right people installed.
Beautiful. Hopefully you're seeing by now that implementing like the code of honor is so cool in terms of it does bring up a lot. It brings people to the table. It gets people talking, gets people asking the questions on themselves. Like what is my core values? What do I believe? How do I want to operate? Because if you have somebody who's like, it's their like whole person to be 15 minutes early to everything. And then there's somebody coming in 15 minutes late every single day. They're going to look at that person and be like, man, like that person's always late. I'm always here early. And that resentment can start to build in ways that you don't even see it.
Well, and that like in our code of honor, it's a stay in exchange. It's a stay in exchange in all personal and business transactions, which means if somebody's always there 15 minutes early, somebody's always there 15 minutes late, you're out of exchange because one person's definition of what on time means is not the same as somebody else's. And I'll tell you, one of the things about the code of honor that's really, really important is it just helps you define words. So if I say on time, what does on time mean? If I say apple, what does apple mean to you? If I say, I don't know, there's a crazy video going around called the red laser video. Have you seen this video? It says red laser. And when you play it, it's like this weird song that goes, red laser, red laser, red. It's like this, you hear it and it's like this is called the red laser video. But then they start changing the words on the screen and the sound doesn't change at all. But all the things that it sounds like, it says like, I don't know, your parking space. You're like, what? How did it go from red laser to your parking space? And it still sounds the same. And they put up like 5, 10, 15 different things that word sounds like. And you're like, how is this tricking my brain? Because it just said red freaking laser, But here's why I bring that up, is it sometimes we can hear the exact same thing, but you hear red laser and I hear parking spaces. That was a bad example, but like parking spaces. But the example of the red laser video is the difference between what you heard and what I heard. And in every conversation, there's what you heard, there's what I said, there's what I meant, and there's what was actually said with the words that were said. So said, meant, heard, right? Is that like all of those things are discernible and different. And by putting this code of honor in place, you eliminate the confusing conversation of what was said, what was meant, what was heard.
So powerful. So powerful. I love that. Now, the book does, hopefully this has motivated you enough to be like, man, I need that in my salon.
Yeah,
Because I
get
can
the book.
guarantee,
By the way, if you want the link to
yeah,
the book, comment book. If this has been freaking helpful, say freaking helpful in the
absolutely.
comments.
Oh, I wanted to ask, because I know people are asking like, oh, well, I've had my salon for so long. It's never too late to implement a code of honor in your
Yeah,
salon.
I mean, look, best time to start your code of honor is in the first month that you're open. You know, the next best time to do your code of honor? Right now.
Yep. Good.
It's that, like, you know, the best time to plant an oak tree was 30 years ago. Second best time is now. Second best time.
Yes.
And I think it's the same thing as, like, if you don't have rules in your organization, it means there's a lot of assumptions. You're probably fighting because there's no rules. You know, I'm working with my contractors right now in my event center and all this other stuff. And, you know, I don't have rules with the contractors. And I realized that that's a problem because some of the contractors on time does not mean on time. Some of them, yes, some of them, no, right? And so it's like, well, what's communication? And can you do work if I haven't signed a piece of paper and all those things? So, like, what I realize is I forget sometimes that in work, we have really clear rules, but with other new relationships, I don't have them. So a new partner. So just throwing this out here, I know this sounds crazy, but like, what if you set up code of honor with the partners that you worked with the vendors that you have? What's their code of honor? With the cleaning lady who comes to your business, like, what's the code of honor? And you might just say, well, hey, this is our code of honor. It sounds silly, but I've literally worked with people when I bring on a partner, and I'm like, I want to show you our code of honor. And if you want to work with us, you must agree to this code of honor. They're like, what? What are you talking about? And I'm like, hey, if you work with anybody on my team, they will live and die by this. If you're willing to live and die by this, then we're playing ball. If not, and you just yes it, then we're not going to have a good relationship.
Yeah. Because it's bringing forward the standards I hold as a company,
Yep.
and having value in yourself and having value for your company to stand on a foundation. Like, the code of honor, honestly, is like such a great foundation for your company to withstand so much that's going to come its way, because it's inevitable. You're not going to have your salon's not going to be perfect. Nothing doesn't mean nothing's going to go wrong. When those things come up, what's your foundational piece that holds you guys together? And you know that how you're operating comes up to that. So if you want a copy of our code, text the word code to 916-258-0720.
Whoa, you can text it in.
Yeah.
So fancy, Kayla.
I know, I wrote it down. It'll be in the description as well. But those of you who are listening in your car, I was like, let me just tell you the number.
Don't text and drive. Only podcast and drive. And the only podcast I listen to is the Profitable Salon podcast. Just no, I have no skin in that game, but just kidding.
So I also want to know, I always love making sure, because in like this, if you've never heard of this before, maybe you are in the middle of this. If you've heard of it, maybe you have the book on your bookshelf. You're like, maybe I should actually read that. Jason, what are some of the mistakes? I know you've done so many.
I've done so many mistakes. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
I've done so many mistakes. I have, by the way, made a lot of mistakes. But yeah, go ahead.
You've helped so many people implement code of honor. What are
Hundreds.
some mistakes that, if we could tell our listeners, that they could avoid in building?
Yeah, well, like I said, first mistakes were the ones I made, which was I set up the rules with the owner and just rolled them out to our team. Wrong.
No.
The other one is the rules are for the team, not for the owner. Wrong. What were the other ones that I could tell you? The other big mistakes that I've made on code of honor, or I've seen other people do, is they let people off the hook, and they're like, well, if you're not, like I kind of said this one too, but if you're not there, that's okay. We'll fill you in. You have to say, if you're not there to create them, then you're by default agreeing to the rules. Another thing that comes up is people are always like, well, do I have to pay people to come to this meeting and what's going on? Yeah, you do. You want to pay people to come to this meeting. It's like, well, I did it on a day off and I wanted everybody to come. And I'm like, no, man, that's not how that works. Like, this is part of running your business. So that's another weird thing that I think I've seen people do. Another one that we've made too, like, it's so funny. We posted our code of honor and I look at it all the time now, right? It's like up in our office. I used to have one posted in the office all the time. And then we updated it and we didn't print out a new copy. And like, so it just got taken down and kind of got put in a wastebasket basically. And we didn't put a new one up. We just put the new one up. And so I would say our mistake and other people's mistake was not posting the code of honor. There's something magical about when you've written it and it becomes a physical manifestation of what it is. It's so funny. I saw some other things that we were doing too about pictures going back up and other things going back up. I'm like, aha, yep, we're doing like the things that we've talked about, the core things. I'm like, yeah, we're back to what's important. Yeah. And I was like, yes, that's what I want to see. We're going back to what was important in our organization, because it's just, you know, you get sloppy and somebody thinks they know better and whatever else is going on. And I'm like, yeah, I'm grateful that we're going back to those things. And so I would say posting the code of honor is a big deal. Also, hiring people to the code is a big deal. Make sure it's involved in your hiring process before you hire somebody. That is a really, really big deal. If you don't, people are like, oh, we hired them and then we reviewed the code of honor. No, man, you want to do it before you've hired them, because that's the final step in the screening process. Like, our last meeting with everybody is a code of honor meeting. We review it. And if they are like, oh yeah, all that stuff sounds pretty basic, I'm scared. If they say, no, this one's really hard and this one's really easy, I'm good. But I have to see that they're willing to say it. Everybody who's ever said to me, all the people that have ever said, this code of honor looks super easy, these are common sense rules, was fired within 3 to 6 months because they actually didn't take it seriously.
Yeah.
They thought it was lip service. So that's a big mistake. I think people don't, hire from their code of honor. I'm trying to think of other things that are in there.
They make exceptions. They're like, oh, well.
Another code of honor is don't legislate mood. I've seen people say something like, have to be happy all the time. Don't legislate mood. That's a bad one. That's not good. That's not real. People can't be just happy all the time.
It's unrealistic for sure.
Yeah, there was another one that said, deal with it. Oh, I wish I could remember what it was. Deal with it in 24 hours or let it go. I didn't like that rule. It wasn't in our code. It was in one of my clients' code they created. They said, we want to deal with it in 24 hours or let it go. And what happened is when they built that rule, basically what they said is, that's from 24 hours ago, can't bring it up anymore. And it kind of made it so that it was like you had a time limit on making something right. And they're like, I didn't even have the right words to say to you yet.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like that one. I didn't like that one. That was not a good code of honor too. And I would say, be careful about I know the other one. This is what everybody says during a code of honor. This inevitably comes up. Can't we just use the golden rule? Treat others the way you want to be treated. And people will just say, let's just make that our code of honor. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And most of the time people will agree and they're like, yeah, that sounds good. I don't know why that's what they sound. They're all kids or something, but like they all think it's a good idea, right? They're like, that sounds great. But here's the problem, Kayla. Do you know somebody who doesn't treat themselves as well as you do?
Yes.
So like we were outside walking today and there's a bunch of people smoking. I don't smoke. If you're going to poison your body every day with cigarettes or alcohol or some other random thing and whatever, I don't treat myself that way. So to that person, the abuse is okay. To me, it's not. So I don't want somebody on my team that is going to treat themselves the way they want to be treated because I have a higher standard. I think our team has I think you have a higher standard than things that I have. And that's what I want. I want team in this office that has a higher standard than me in other areas. And we all are striving to be better. That's what makes a really exceptional code of honor. Those are most of my do's and don'ts.
I love that. Wow. Super good. Hopefully got a lot out of this podcast. I know time is up. We talk about code of honor all the time. If you listen to any of our past episodes, code of honor comes up a lot when we're solving problems or asking questions, like go back to your code of honor. So it's like, all right, we just need one whole episode all about our code of honor and how we have these conversations about
I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. If it was pretty good, type fun. Pretty good. I don't know. Type awesome or text me and say, Jason, listen to your podcast with Kayla. It was awesome.
Do that. And if you want a copy of our code of honor, again, text 916-258-0720. If you were driving, it is in the description. You can look later, but I will send you a copy of our code of honor. You can see what it looks like. And if you want support and be like, what does this look like? I need support in this process? You can always reach out to us. Same number. You can text us and we would love to support you in that. Thanks, Jason. It's always a pleasure having you on here.
Heck yeah. Bangarang, Kayla.
My new podcast.
Well, it's on the podcast. The podcast. Awesome. Great job.
Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time on the Profitable Salon Owner Podcast.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Profitable Salon Owner Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, leave us a review, and check us out at profitablesalon.com for more episodes, content, and to help you turn your salon into the business you've always dreamt of.